各位委員
Good morning, members. First, welcome to this panel on constitutional meeting. We now have a quorum, and the meeting shall begin. And this meeting will be conducted through remote teleconferencing. My members please set your screen to landscape mode and adopt the right color for your background. For the EC orange, for the function constituency, and please use orange, and the GC members please use purple. That when it's turn to speak, please turn on your camera and show your face. And the microphone would only turn on at my orders. And if the members would like to submit any papers, and please send your document to the email account of this committee. And this email account has been listed to the circulars to members. First, information papers issued since the last meeting. Guidelines on election-related activities in respect of the chief executive election issued by the Electoral Affairs Commission. On the 6th of February, Mr. Chan Yung written to this panel. To simply put, the Secretariat and myself have received his letter. He hoped that our panel can start a discussion hoping to getting support from the mainland on fighting the epidemic, as well as interfacing with the anti-epidemic standards of the mainland. Upon receiving his letter, I will discuss with the panel on health services, as this kind of work is mainly under the ambit of the health services panel. However, if we need this mainland support, and our panel may be involved, as well as the coordination by the constitutional and mainland affairs. Therefore, I will talk to the chairman of the health panel to see if there's a chance to convene a joint panel meeting. And Mr. Chan, please take note. On the Friday morning in the Health Services panel meeting, I believe that Mr. Chan and the other colleagues can bring up the subject in that meeting. In any case, I will relay Mr. Chan's suggestions to the chairman of the Health Services panel and for the CMAB. I see that Mr. Martin Liao put up his hand. Mr. Liao? And can we turn on Mr. Liao's microphone? Mr. Liao? And Chairman, I heard what you said. This panel is a constitutional affairs, not a constitutional and mainland affairs panel. Therefore, the panel's work may not align with the CMAB. I agree with you that this is more a health panel matter, even though the mainland is involved. However, the health service panel also communicates with the mainland. Either we conduct a joint panel meeting, or this matter to be handled by the health services panel. Well, I suppose the secretary can look at the terms of reference of our panel to see that whether it covers mainland affairs and whether Mr. Chan Yung's letter is within our terms of reference. Thank you, Mr. Liao. Just now, I saw another member putting up his or her hand. Thank you, Mr. Liao's advice. Before the meeting, we have discussed this letter. I agreed that the health service panel will be the top panel handling the anti-epidemic matters. Well, whereas what Mr. Chen has said may involve the CMAB. Since Mr. Chen had brought up this subject, I will discuss with the chairman of the health service panel. We decide that to hold a joint panel meeting, I suppose that they will be chiefly responsible. Professor Leung? Well, Mr. Liao has spoken for me. I've said it in a few meetings. Well, maybe just a few panels is related to the epidemic. Let's say an education panel. I not object the chairman to discuss with the health service panel that we need to elevate the level. Well, and everyone in Hong Kong is looking at us. After conveying these views, I suppose that we should bring this in the House Committee meeting as well. The members' views are noted. As I said, I would first discuss with the Health Service panel for discussion first. If there are no other views, and let's move on to the second item for discussion at the next meeting. The next meeting shall be held on the 21st of March 2022, Monday, from 2:30 to 4:30. The administration proposed to discuss the following. First, briefing by the Privacy Commission on Personal Data, as well as the briefing from the chairman of the Equal Opportunities Commission. If there are no other views, we shall move on to the next item. Item 3. Briefing by the Secretary for Constitutional and Mainland Affairs on the Chief Executive 2021 Policy Address. I first invite the Secretary, Mr. Eric Zhang, to walk us through the paper. Then I shall invite the members' questions. Please listen. I know that you've all tried Zoom meeting before. Well, I would first ask the staff to delete the virtual hands raised by members so that everyone can have their fair turn. And remember, you can now press the virtual hand function in the Zoom. Then I shall ask the member to speak in turns. Let me read out the list. Regina Yip, Mr. Lai Tong Kwok, Ms. Carmen Kim, Xiao Wei Chen, Nixie Lam, Mr. Martin Liao, Mr. Tang Fei, and Mr. Lam San Kang. Mrs. Virginia Yip, 4 minutes, question and answers included. Shouldn't the Secretary give his remarks first? Sorry, I missed this. Secretary, please give us an introduction. I'm sorry. First, I would like to wish everyone a prosperous new year and a good health and a good career in the year of the tiger. At the online meeting of the Constitutional Affairs meeting, I'm glad to meet up with the electrical members and listen to your views. And the members are the electrical members that are elected in the first electrical election after improving the electoral system. I look forward to the next 4 years that I shall have close communication and to work together with the members to fully implement the Patriots administering Hong Kong and to let Hong Kong to achieve good governance for the public good as well as long-standing stability and safety. In today's meeting, I would like to brief the members on the policy address by the Chief Executive on October the 6th. I would like to brief members on the main measures on my bureau related to constitutional affairs. And on January the 12th, the Chief Executive announced on the electrical meeting on the proposal to reorganize the government for the reference of the next term of government. And at today's meeting, I hope to listen to the members' views on the proposal to any adjustment to the CMAB work portfolio under the restructure proposal. In addition to the colleagues from my bureau, I've also invited the Privacy Commissioner for Personal Data and the Chairman of the Equal Opportunities Commission to attend the meeting. We're happy to answer members' questions later. And I shall give an introduction on the policy measures on constitutional policy. The National People's Congress passed a decision of the National People's Congress on improving the election system of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region on March 11th last year. And on March 30th, the Standing Committee of the NPC passed the newly revised Annexes 1 and 2 of the Basic Law. In order to implement the decision March 11 of the National People's Congress of the newly revised Annex 1 and 2 of the Basic Law, after deliberation and approval by LegCo, the SAR government has officially gazetted the Improving Electoral System Consolidated Amendments Ordinance 2021, fulfilling the SAR's constitutional responsibilities. The first two elections after improved electoral system, which were the 2021 Election Committee Subsector Ordinary Elections and the Electoral General Election, were successfully held on 19th of September and 19th of December. For the Election Committee, the 4,380 voters returned 364 members of the Election Committee. The voter turnout was 90%. At the Electoral General Election, about 1.35 electors cast their votes on the polling day to return 90 Electoral members from 153 candidates of different background and different political spectrum.
The successful implementation of the two elections is of great significance to Hong Kong and all members of the public. They expounded the characteristics of broad representation, fair competition, political inclusiveness, and balanced participation, opening a new chapter of good governance for Hong Kong. The elections also laid down a sound foundation for the 2022 CE election to be held on the 27th of March this year. And in particular, we have consolidated some of the learning from the September election of last year. We have looked into the procedures of the elections. Apart from being fair and open, we have also included electronic measures so as to provide the highest convenience for our voters, including we have increased our polling stations to 630, and we have over 6,200 ballot paper issuing desks, representing a 10% and 122% increase as compared to the same number in the 2016 Electoral General Election, respectively. It has provided a lot of convenience and shortened the time for voting for the voters. And also, there had been three voting polls that had been provided to those that had been living in the mainland for cross-boundary people flow that had been stopped because of COVID-19, facilitating those living in the mainland to come to these to go through these relevant checkpoints and cast their votes. And at the same time, there had been overall for the process of the poll, there had been smooth conducting of the poll during that time. And also, there had been a smooth process in terms of the opening of the ballot boxes and also the counting of the votes. And there had been optimization of the procedures as partly based on the electronic polling procedures that had taken place in the previous election. The overall conduction of the election had been smooth, and it had been on a fair, open, and honest basis. And at 10:30, the vote counting had promptly started right after the voting. And there had been 70,000 functional constituency ballot papers and 1,350,680 geographic constituency ballot papers and 1,426 election committee constituency ballot papers being counted. And basically, the entire counting process was completed smoothly at 9:56 a.m. on the following day of the polling date and took around 11 hours, which is the earliest completion time in elections in recent years. And in accordance with relevant statutory requirements, the AAC needs to submit a report to the CE within 3 months after the completion of the election. And the AAC, after they have submitted the report, we shall report the details of the review to this panel. And the Bureau will continue to follow up with the AAC and the REO to seriously take stock of the experience of the two elections and make enhancements with a view to ensuring that the upcoming CE election will continue to be conducted smoothly in a fair, open, and honest manner, and implementing the principle of patriots administering Hong Kong. Further, in terms of upholding the basic law of Hong Kong SAR of the People's Republic of China and swearing allegiance to the Hong Kong SAR of the People's Republic of China, basic requirements for people administering Hong Kong and public officers, as well as fundamental obligation and responsibility. This is also an important foundation for ensuring the principle of patriots administering Hong Kong. To implement the legislative intent, there had been a very important step taken forward, and that is the Public Officers Candidacy and Taking Up Offices Miscellaneous Amendments Ordinance 2021, which was passed by the Electoral, and the government published the ordinance in Gazette on the 21st of May last year, which came into effect on the same day. The national flag, national emblem, and national anthem are the symbols and signs of our country and must be protected by the law and respected by the people. The Electoral has completed scrutiny and passed the National Flag and Emblem Ordinance 2021 on 29th of September last year. And the amended National Flag and Emblem Ordinance came to effect on the 8th of October last year, following Gazettal on the same day, while the National Anthem Ordinance and already gazetted and took effect on the 12th of June 2020, and the Hong Kong SAR has fulfilled the constitutional responsibility in respect of the relevant ordinances. The regional flag and regional emblem are symbols and signs of the Hong Kong SAR, and the government agrees with the views of the Electoral that suitable amendments should be made to the regional flag and regional emblem ordinance for better alignment with the amended national the National Flag and National Emblem Ordinance, as well as with the National Anthem Ordinance. And the government plans to introduce an amendment bill on the Regional Flag and Regional Emblem Ordinance to the Electoral in this legislative year. Further, for the protection of personal data to combat doxing acts which intrude into personal data privacy, the government introduced a Personal Data Privacy Amendment Bill 2021, which criminalizes doxing acts to the Electoral in July last year. And after being passed by the Electoral, the Personal Data Privacy Amendment Ordinance 2021 took effect on the 8th of October last year after Gazettal. On the same day, the PCPD also published in Gazette the implementation guidelines for criminal investigation, prosecution of doxing-related offences and issue of cessation notices. As well, the ranks of officers authorized with the above powers and pursuant to the ordinance's enactment, the PCPD made the first arrest on the 13th of December last year upon the powers of the ordinance. The PCPD will exercise the enforcement powers according to the ordinance to protect personal data privacy. The review of the anti-discrimination legislation, Miscellaneous Amendment Ordinance 2020 and the Sex Discrimination Amendment Ordinance were passed by the Electoral in June of 2020 and March 2021 respectively. And there will be further publicity and public education, and we will continue to listen to the views of the panel and further enhance on those. As well, in order to be able to implement one country, two systems, we have to adhere to the Constitution and the Basic Law. There is a steering committee that had been set up and that is chaired by the CS in order to promote and educate the public on the Constitution and also the Basic Law, as well as one country, two systems, so that they have a deeper and more accurate understanding of it, and also to raise the capability of society at large in terms of understanding and learning about the Constitution and the Basic Law. And there are a lot of workshops, online seminars, etc., to provide these learning opportunities. And there will be mobile promotion activities among targeted groups, including schools and also the civil service, in order to promote the Constitution and also in the Basic Law. In anti-discrimination laws, the Discrimination Legislation Miscellaneous Amendment Ordinance and the Sex Discrimination Amendment Ordinance 2021 were passed by the Electoral in June of 2020 and March 2021 respectively to enhance protection under the four anti-discrimination ordinance, i.e. Sex Discrimination Ordinance, Disability Discrimination Ordinance, Family Status Discrimination Ordinance, and Race Discrimination Ordinance. And amongst others, the SDO has been amended to strengthen legal protection for breastfeeding women as well. And we will be working together with the OC as to how we will be able to strengthen anti-discrimination legislation implementation and also to assist the newcomers to Hong Kong from Mainland in order to combat any discrimination concerned. And also, there had been a unit set up for anti-sexual harassment under the EOC, and there will be stepping up of the work so as to lower any sexual harassment. And also, there is a administration guideline for application to all government bureau and departments and regulated organizations, collectively called public authorities, providing services to people of diverse race, making a total of over 100, thereby promoting effectively equal access to public services for people of Hong Kong, regardless of their race. And under the guidelines, public authorities are required to proactively offer translation interpretation services so that service users not able to communicate in spoken or written Chinese or English can have access to public services. And the authorities are also required to collect data, provide training to frontline staff and new recruits to enhance the sensitivity and understanding of race-related issues. We'll closely monitor the implementation of the guidelines to ensure expected effect would be achieved. And also, the government established the Steering Committee on Ethnic Minority Affairs. And also, for equal access to public services by ethnic minorities. And we provide opportunities for their moving of upward mobility, etc. And further, in terms of eliminating discrimination on grounds of sexual orientation and gender identity on public education and publicity, we are committed to promoting the culture of values of inclusiveness, and the code of practice against discrimination in employment on the ground of sexual orientation had also been introduced. And we have also set up various training programs for the purpose so as to provide sexual minorities with the protection and the relevant education for the relevant authorities, as well as social workers, disciplined services, etc., so that they enhance their knowledge of and sensitivity towards sexual minorities. On children's rights, the Children's Rights Education Funding Scheme had been set up to promote children's rights, and also there had been a proposal of reorganizing the government structure as announced by the CE, suggesting transferring the portfolio on children's rights under the Constitution and Mainland Affairs Bureau to the Labour and Welfare Bureau, which is responsible for child policy, in order to consolidate and rationalize the division of work and establish a dedicated policy desk. Child policy involves the portfolios of various bureaus and cross-sectoral issues. At present, the Constitution and Mainland Affairs Bureau is responsible for Children's Rights Education Funding Scheme, the Children's Rights Forum, and coordinating the SAR report under the UN Convention for Rights of Children, while the Labour and Welfare Bureau is responsible for supporting the work of the Commission on Children, and the terms of reference of the Commission of Children include promoting and promulgating children's rights. And in order to unify policy authority and reduce the dispersion of functions, a proposal of reorganizing the government structure suggests transferring the portfolio on children's rights to the Labour and Welfare Bureau, and the Commission on Children will continue to be chaired by the Chief Secretary to provide a platform for cross-bureau and cross-sector discussion on child policy. And there will be the transferring of the secretariat of the supporting this work to under the Labor Department. Now, thank you for bringing us through the paper. We have 15 members who have expressed their interest to ask questions. Now, would you provide time for answering your questions? So I'll be tight on controlling the time. First member to speak, Ms. Regina Ip.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, the Secretary's report. As a GC member, I would like to thank under the leadership of the CMAB, the 19th of November electoral election was successfully held. Even though it seems very far away from us, but I must commend the CMAB that the procedures have been quite smooth. I would like to talk about the education on the constitutional affairs. The Secretary said that you would put more effort into explaining the relationship between the basic law and constitution, as well as the central government SAR relations. You can see that a lot of the foreign media and other foreign politicians accusing the central authorities of undermining our self-administered high degree of automation. We're not fully autonomous. Earlier, the secretary mentioned that the general study textbook claiming that there is separation of powers when this is not the case for Hong Kong. Well, this is distorted knowledge. While an international media and local society have serious misunderstanding on the relationship between the Hong Kong and the central government, the constitution and the basic law, and what degree of high autonomy, and as well the administration-led government, and what kind of protection on human rights and freedom. This is not absolute for the last. That the UN PCI was passed in 1966 and ratified in 1976 with 176 countries as signatories. And human rights is not absolute. If we set the bar too high, nobody can achieve it. And yet, a lot of people regard this as absolute. And some officials talk about protecting privacy and afraid to track the public. Well, and afraid the public will not allow the tracking of the virus and contact tracing. Well, on political freedom and anti-discrimination, the CMAB should come up with a framework on constitutional affair education, whether on civil service or in our schools. What do you think, Secretary? Thank you, Mrs. Yip's views. First, I'd like to thank Ms. Yip to commending our performance in the election. I'd like to thank the Electoral panel and the views of other members. On constitutional affairs education and our PRC Constitution and the basic law on the promotion of basic law and education. And over the years, the Electoral has provided a lot of valuable advice on this subject. In my opening remarks, since the unification, the basic law and the constitution form the constitutional basis. Therefore, the public should be well versed in this for the steady implementation of the one country, two system. I agree to Mrs. Yip's views on that. The senior officials of the government, while the Chief Secretary have chaired a Basic Law Steering Committee, there are a few working groups, including educating the public and the schools, or a broad promotion and the business sector. So there will be target in different walks of life on promotion. For the past few years, we worked very hard to reach out to different parts of society through various ways. For example, as targeting the young people, will advertise on social media or online games or parent-child workshops. We try to do a more lively presentation. And coming up, we hope to adopt a fresh approach and a new mindset by moving ahead with the times to effectively promoting the basic law. If the members have any good ideas, I welcome you to bring it up to me. Thank you. One more thing. You claim that a lively and down-to-earth presentation. Of course, I agree with this, especially reaching out to young people. Well, you make sure that the important principles are accurate. We'll work harder on that. Well, I put it in our website. I'm happy to write for you. Well, I do have a part on this aspect in my election manifesto. Thank you, Mrs. Yip. Next, Mr. Lai Tong Kwok. Thank you, Chairman. A question on the Privacy Commissioner. On Mr. Ada Chung. Well, I know that some of the email software contain tracking function, which are capable of telling the user of the whereabouts for a certain period of time. May I ask this Commissioner, does this feature violate the principles on the privacy legislation or any requirements? If not, if the government need to use the Leave Home Safe app with a tracking function to track down close contacts or sub-close contacts, if the government would like to add the tracking feature, would it be in violation of the principles of data collection or other provisions in the privacy legislation? Commissioner. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Lai's question. For the Personal Data Privacy Ordinance, PDPO, this is a rule-based ordinance. Well, it does not prescribe on the how and way of data collection of the the do and don'ts. Let's say the public is using social media platforms. We've scrutinized this social media. A lot of these has a location tracking function, or whether for a rough location or location tracking through GPS. Well, the relevant provider will often offer a choice to the users and allow them to opt out of the function. For the case of Leave Home Safe, currently for this app, we have looked at it many times, and we noted the public concerns. We explained to the public on numerous locations that for the Leave Home Safe, it does not contain a tracking feature. If we need to upgrade it to Leave Home Safe for anti-epidemic purposes and for the sake of public health, and therefore we'll need to include a tracking function in the PTPO. There's no express provision prohibiting that. In other words, the functions of the Leave Home app can add a contact tracing function. Well, the PTPO mainly principles on a data collection, that the data collection must be fair and transparent, as well as, for example, on the type of data collected, as well as the purpose must legitimate be, and what the extent must be reasonable but not excessive. You must also inform the user that the purpose of the data collection and the usage of such data, and which type of parties that will be transferred to. Let's say to the health authorities to conduct contact tracing, that you have to make it clear on this. If you're able to fulfill all these criteria, well, the ordinance requirements shall be met. For the PDPO, and Section 59 allows for exemptions if for the sake of public health, including the mental and the physical health of the user or the physical and mental health of the others. Therefore, make use of the health information of the user, or an identity and its location, that this will constitute an exemption. Thank you for the Commissioner's detailed explanation. And I hope that the Secretary can convey the Commissioner's views to the administration to consider. Currently, a lot of people feel that there might be problems with their privacy that's object to us. The Commissioner has given us a very concrete reply. Chairman, Secretary, let me say a few words here. First, I would like to thank Mr. Lai's suggestion. Quite recently, the public are concerned how do we protect the privacy while enhancing our efforts in fighting the epidemic. The HSR attach great importance to privacy, and this policy bureau have working towards that end. I might stress so. We're at a critical period of the pandemic. To win this war and to restore our lives to normal, we need to strike a balance. When formulating our policies, we will consider the legitimacy and so on. I hope that the public can understand. We need to fight this virus together. On personal privacy, we'll have to strike a right balance in order to win the war. Next, Mr. Carmen Can. Is her microphone turned on? Can you check? We couldn't hear anything. Can the staff look into it? Fixed now? Can you hear me? Okay. Can you start again? First, I'm going to declare that I'm a member of the advisory board on privacy protection. Well, my question was raised by Ms. Lai. I'd like to thank Ms. Ada Chung's clear explanation. Well, on the terms of fighting epidemic, there were a lot of misconceptions. Well, on balancing our health and personal privacy, we should put lives first. I hope that the policy bureaus can stress on this point, so that when the health authorities on enhancing the Leave Home app in the future, we must emphasize that human lives come first. And after the commissioner have outlined the criteria, well, it shows that there would not be a violation of the privacy. For example, a real registration and tracking function of the Leave Home Safe app. As long as you follow this principle, will be fine. The public must get this accurate idea, and also the government's duty that which we preferred on. Well, we should put the anti-epidemic works first.
And another issue, in paragraph 26, it is mentioned, and that is in terms of doxing. Now, I see that there will be furtherance of the sharing of information and the regulation of data processors, etc., as mentioned in your presentation. And in terms of cross-boundary data handling, I think we have to look into that as well, because next to Shenzhen, and that is in the Greater Bay Area, there is a lot of emphasis in terms of data collection and also mobile data handling. So I think this is an important area. We want there to be good flow across the boundary. At the same time, privacy needs to be looked at. Now, also, the Commissioner, if you can talk about the process in the protection of personal data privacy, if you can update on that. Well, who will answer that question? Will it be the Secretary or the Commissioner? Well, for the review of the ordinance, the PPDO, the ordinance had been in implementation for a number of years, and it is true that it needs to be updated in various respects, and there will be a review on that. I think the commissioner will supplement on this, but on the other hand, I think that for this particular panel, we will be coming back to you, and we have on the any future proposed amendments, and we have previously also listened to the views of this panel on the ordinance. As for the taking of oath of public officers, there are a few types of personnel which need to take the oath of the CE, the judges, the electoral members, and also the members including district council members, etc. And there are further public service officers who will need to do so. And we will provide further information to this panel and to the Electoral on this. Yes, Mr. Dick, please. Dick Chi-yun. Yes, after the election of the Electoral, the next day, the State Council had come up with a white paper concerning Hong Kong's constitutional affairs progress, and it mentions the universal suffrage for Hong Kong in the elections. I do not know why the government had not given the central authorities, the state councils, white paper any response. Now, we have been talking about high degree of autonomy, the Hong Kong people ruling Hong Kong, and also patriots administering Hong Kong, and also the implementation of these for the stability and prosperity of Hong Kong. We have talked about all these. But for the electoral and CE direct election, these are cruxes in the minds of the Hong Kong people. And the direct election for these elections and universal suffrage had been a concern for the Hong Kong people for a long time. So my question is, how would the Hong Kong government in a specific period of time discuss these issues and also to implement the constitutional responsibility of the government? And when will you be giving substance to what is promised in the Basic Law? Well, for the white paper from the State Council, it says that according to the Constitution of the country and also to the Basic Law and the NPC promulgations, that there would be continued progress in Hong Kong in constitutional affairs, and also there will be collective efforts among the Hong Kong people, among the different sectors, so that there will be, as you mentioned, the double universal suffrage for the CE and also the Electoral. There is no change in this, and there is no change regarding this in the Basic Law as well. So there will be a gradual approach to carry on the work to these ends. Now, for improving the electoral system in Hong Kong, we have come to a certain conclusion of work there, and there had been implementation of patriots administering Hong Kong. And we also see that including in the Electoral, the 90 members had been returned successfully, and that is to say we are making progress in patriots administering Hong Kong and also in democracy. This is our direction. We continue to provide beneficial factors to these ends. Secretary, yes, I think we are agreed in terms of general directions and principles. My question is, what about the specific measures of the Hong Kong government? Yes, there are certain controversies in society about these elections, but I'm just asking that specifically, how would the Hong Kong government, in terms of specific measures, or do you have timetables in implementing elections of this sort? Now, you have to understand that the central government is central in directing the constitutional affairs progress of Hong Kong, and we will continue to improve and perfect our constitutional work and also election systems so that we would be able to get the support from the different sectors of Hong Kong. And as we develop and go forward, we will finally arrive at these this goal, as you have mentioned just now. Yes, we have heard you, Mr. Tichian. Yes, Paul Tse, please. The Honorable Paul Tse, can you please, colleagues, can you please switch on the microphone for him? Can you hear me now? Yes. We can hear you now. Well, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Secretary. Now, the Secretary seems to say that Hong Kong is in a relatively passive role, but there are things that we can more proactively do. I do not accept the answer that was provided just now. Mr. Tick had mentioned there had been this white paper, and also even earlier, there had been the 100 years of strives of the party, and one of which was the achievement of one country, two systems. And Hong Kong will have to coordinate with this. We have to understand what the overall strategy and direction of the country is. Now, I'll not go into the specifics of the white paper, but basically, after the decision of the NPC last March in amending Annexes 1 and 2, we have been saying that we will be reviewing the basic law and also to plug some of the loopholes or some of the things that have not been done, such as Article 23 passage of the basic law. I understand there will be a new term of government coming into the Hong Kong SAR government, and we might have to wait for that. But we must not say that we are waiting for orders from the central government before we take any action. That's not the attitude that we should take. So on the one hand, we have one country that is a solid foundation, but in two systems, we should also be proactive. I hope the Secretary would do that. And also in the white paper, it talks about democratic process, and it's not just limited to elections, in raising the quality and quantity of democracy, whether it is by consensus, by consultation, and dialogue. We have to do more. But if I look at the Hong Kong situation now for the district councils, it is very homogeneous. And also, given the COVID situation, there's not been a lot of dialogue with the people of Hong Kong, because there are less opportunities to speak up. And also there had been complaints that even the mutual help agencies among the public housing estates, those need to be eliminated. Well, that may not be desirable. So in that sense, Hong Kong seems to be regressing in terms of democratic procedures. So in the short term or the long term, how are we going to raise the quality of democracy so that it is not lip service, but really we can implement and give it flesh? Yes, if the Secretary can answer those questions. Well, thank you very much for Mr. Tse's questions. Well, I have mentioned just now the concerning the goal, which has not changed at all, we are moving towards the goal of universal suffrage. So we are talking about that as a final goal. That remains true. And we are doing that step by step. Because after all, in the past 20 years or more, in democratic development, in fact, yes, indeed, there had been certain problems. And now we are putting it on the right track, and we are correcting the situation where, in terms of direction of development, it has gone wrong before, including the implementation of patriots administering Hong Kong. We are improving all these step by step in an orderly and gradual manner. And the relevant conditions will be ready at a certain point. So we need some patience in this regard because the problems have been accumulated over a long number of years. So we need some development before we can pick up on speed of our pace. Paul? Well, what I'm saying that, Mr. Tse, we're not just sitting here waiting for orders from the central government. Yes, they are central and they are in the direction. But on the other hand, Hong Kong is also moving ahead in terms of the economy and people's livelihood. We have to be looking into this, and at the same time we are creating the conditions for consultation and further progress. In the future, I would like to listen more to your views so that we can do more work in this regard in good time. You Lam Lam? Yes, as everybody knows, for district and local systems, there had been certain malfunctions. For example, in the rural areas, how can we really provide the opinions of the people to the higher rungs of the government? It is lacking, partly because of COVID. Sometimes with grievances, the people of Hong Kong are not able to find the right government entities to talk to. And also we're talking about the election system and structure going forward. What about the district councils, for instance? How are we able to improve on the structure and functioning of the district council? Do you have a timetable? Do you have some plans as to the progress, as to when you can improve on the district councils, for instance? Do you have a paper or recommendation for us to discuss so that we can plug these holes? Because at present, because of COVID, and there are grievances which among the people of Hong Kong, which are basically addressed only by some self-help groups, etc., without the relevant government entities to support them.
So, Secretary, so the questions is about district administration. So, since Mr. Chair talked about a district council and district administration and consultation, I did not have time to respond. As for the future of the district councils, well, a district council is one of the consultative or advisory bodies for the government in order to ensure effective relaying of the district views. The various departments will consult different district organizations, for example, the area committees, the fight crime committees, or fire safety committees. The advisory and the consultation are still happening. And we also have the district management committee chaired by the district officers. These are the district level advisory bodies and structures and has been effective. As for what's the future for district council, the CE had said that for this current term government, Well, now that the pandemic in full swing and we're putting all our efforts into it, and for the 27th of March seat election, the preparation is underway. Therefore, we will not have the time to conduct by-elections and to proceed within this term of government. I hope that the next term government will have a holistic review of the district administration and district councils. The seat has said they should hope that the next term of government, including the government restructuring proposals and the replanning of the district administration and whether there will be election, I suppose that we should only leave that by the next term of government. And we know that there's only a short time before the next term of government. Even and if the next term government decides to take on this task, do we have a timetable, or do we actually need to discuss from scratch? Well, Secretary, quickly, do you have a rough time frame that? Well, it's actually difficult to come up with a concrete timetable. District administration is important, and how do we receive community feedback? No matter who will lead the next term government, I believe that livelihoods work will always be important. Thank you, Secretary. I need to be very strict on the time limit. Next, Mr. Martin Liao. Thank you, Chair. Well, the election committee and the election and the electrical election were successfully held. The new arrangements like the special queues and the voter ballot crossing point of the voting stations, it demonstrated the hard work of the bureaucrats. Well, the turnout of the electrical election is about 30%. For a much overhauled system, this turnout was considered decent. However, this demonstrated that some of the citizens don't understand the significance of the improved election system, and therefore refuse to give their vote of confidence on this improved election system. The communication and explanation work is not over yet. I wanted you to conduct more in-depth explanation to dispel misconceptions on the new election system. Besides the API and the pamphlets, would you consider more creative ways? That's the first question. And second, on the oath taking by public officers, like the Secretary said, upholding the basic law and swear allegiance to the SAR government is a basic requirement for the administrators and public officers. The government claimed that the public officers of the public organizations will be studied. May I ask about the progress? Do you have a preliminary or tentative timetable for oath taking by these public organization officers? Well, if this involves a legislative amendment, will the government allow oath taking by some public organizations first? Two questions. I'd like to thank Chairman and Mr. Liu's comments and questions. On the public communication on the improved electoral system, I would view that this task is not over yet. We'll continue to keep explaining to the public. Well, the principle of patriots administering Hong Kong is key to the one country, two system. Therefore, we will continue to deepen our work. Well, we are willing to consider an effective and creative approaches. If any other electrical members like Mr. Liu yourself have any good suggestions, I welcome you to come forward. definitely will enhance our work on this. As for the oath taking by public officers, well, some had already taken the oath. Pardon me. Well, the public officials and electoral members and district councillors were covered. I'm asking about the public officials in statutory organizations. I'm about to start. Well, those who you mentioned already took the oath. Well, for those in statutory organizations, we're looking determining the direction. I believe that very soon we will have a concrete proposal which will brief to Electoral. Well, any legislative amendment or what can be done before the legislative amendment will consider this. I believe that quite soon they will complete our study and release and report. Next, Mr. Yim Kong. And thank you, Chairman. Secretary. Hello, everyone. Well, the Greater Bay Area is a key focus of Hong Kong Mainland collaboration. So has the Bureau the Bureau can really conduct more frequent exchanges with the GBA municipalities. The question on GBA. The GBA implementation, well, I've been talking to central government ministries and our communication with the Guangdong government has not ceased. Even during the pandemic, we are keeping close contacts. And last year, the chief executive has reported the central government has met with the Guangdong officials on the GBA implementation. The GBA is not only a key initiative at the national level that was personally planned by and taken forward by Mr. Xi Jinping, and also this is a key economic driver for Hong Kong after the pandemic is over. Therefore, the government attaches great importance with GBA development. And the cooperation with the Macau and Guangdong definitely will continue. While during the pandemic, we will communicate with different ways. Let's say the commissioner for GBA, he's with us today. We have daily communications if necessary, face-to-face or online meeting will continue. Please be assured, even in this critical period, such work will not cease. Mr. Yim, will you introduce a pilot trial to allow the officials to second on the respective administration for brief periods? Thank you for Mr. Yim's suggestion. So we will look into this proposal. Thank you. Next, Mr. Lei Ho-yin, Vice Chairman. And thank you, Chairman, and thank you for the members. I have two pieces of information to share. Simon Lee, Deputy Chairman. Well, just now there was a question about the tracking function in the Leave Home Safe app. I've written on HK01 on the legal basis of allowing such a feature. Just now, Mr. Liao talk about explain the improving electoral system. I have another article released it. I will forward to the panel for the reference. I have two suggestions for the Secretary. On page 9, on the education of Constitution and the basic law, especially for the Basic Law Steering Committee, has done a lot on this and made a lot of contribution. Well, there are 2 points that we need to consider. You come and talk about the subsidy, the sponsorship scheme. First, to promote the Constitution and the Basic Law of Public Education, and second is to sponsor the research on the Constitution and the Basic Law. Well, currently the mandate was very narrow. Only as sponsored projects on how to promote the Constitution and the Basic Law, but not the research on the contents. It's simply allowing the study on the promotion. I hope the criteria shall be relaxed. When designing the Basic Law, the political environment was rather chaotic, and I'm worried that there might be concern of some of the research topics. The vetting mechanism will take care of this. And second, and for the BLPSC have in many years the way that we should set up a base to teach Constitution, the Basic Law, and so on. A lot of the education sector would need a center to provide the resources for the organizations and the students and the young people to learn about the Basic Law. This has been in discussing in many meetings. And now, however, at the end, only the 4th floor of the City Hall Library was converted into a teaching resource center, which I see as way inadequate. I wonder if the CMAB can take charge of this and discuss with the steering committee to set up an education resource center. We have similar experience, for example, on environmental protection and sexual education. I hope that to bring this up with the secretary. Well, the secretary, will you take forward the education and research on the Basic Law and Constitution education, as proposed by Mr. Simon Lee? Okay, Mr. Lee's suggestions are well noted. Like I said, I hope that we can improve our promotion of the national security law, the Basic Law, Constitution. These proposals are by Mr. Lee are very concrete and very constructive, and we'll look in review the current situation. Thank you. Next, Mr. Horace Chung. Thank you, Chairman. Well, the Electoral general election that just passed was the first Electoral election after the improved electoral system. And how can we improve the vote counting mechanism? Every time when the election is over, the elected candidates shall focus on their work on the legislature. We usually have to sum up any shortcomings by the next election, that we're only repeating the same mistakes. Just now, in the Secretary's remarks, according to the law, by March you will submit a report to the Chief Executive and report to the Electoral. And we're working with the Election Affairs Committee and the RO to sum up and take stock of the experience. As in the past, before summing up, have you consulted the users, like the candidates? Of the 90 members in Electoral, we all took part in the process from back to end.
So, what about understanding from the so-called users, that is, the candidates and those elected, as to their experience? It's not just about you reviewing your own work and then providing a report, because by so doing, you just know everything from your own point of view. So, in this regard, if I may just put it to you and also to the EAC, so that you will be able to get more information in these directions. Now, in the convention center on the night counting the votes, it was rather confusing in terms of directions, etc. And I was there all through the night, and I saw the media, the candidates, and also the managers, etc., the staff. Everybody was just running around looking for where the votes were counted and where things were located. And even for myself, I vacated the location for a while, and when I wanted to go in, I had to look all around, and the signage was confusing. So if you can review that, that would be good. Now, further, there is a media broadcast center at the location. But interestingly, the candidates cannot go in and out of that center. Now, the media had lodged a complaint through me saying that there were authorizations given to certain people, including candidates, to go into the centers. And we were able to provide interviews, etc., at the media centers. But and we were to be interviewed by the media. However, there was major issues in terms of not authorizing the candidates to go into the media center to facilitate the interviews. That is a small matter, perhaps, but on the other hand, I would just want to remark that there had been the electronic system for use for the 1,426 votes for the electoral system constituency. And in fact, all the votes were already located into the convention center, and the votes were very few, 1,426 only. And my question is, what about the counting of the votes? Well, actually, you've used up a lot of time. Horace, can you speed up your question? But actually, before the counting of the votes, you have used a lot of time on administration, taking the votes out of the bag and all that. My question is, how are you going to use the electronic system better in the future in counting the votes as you did for the direct elections? Well, you have to be very succinct in your answer because you don't have a lot of time. Right. Exactly. We will be coming back with more detailed answers. And this is part of our consultation, listening to the views of Electoral members here. It is not true that we have made a report and therefore it is the final conclusion, but rather it is to facilitate further discussion among, including Electoral members, so that we can get more views. I totally understand where Mr. Cheung's coming from. These are very specific and actual experience of him individually, personally, at the venue. And yes, I think for the process and the procedures, we will continue to learn from experience. And I saw some very good suggestions put forward by Mr. Chan just now. Now, we'll have Mr. Chan asking the next question, but I have to extend this meeting for 15 minutes. And there will be a first round questions by the relevant members who have raised their hands. And I will not be able to go into the second round of questioning because we'll have used up our time. So let's complete the first round. Yes, and I see Ms. Chan and also Tang Fei, these two have raised their hands just now, and I'll include you two in the first round. All right? Well, first of all, I would want to thank Mr. Zhang, the Secretary, and also the Permanent Secretary, Mr. Tang, and colleagues to be here. Yes, I would want to comment on the conducting of the elections, and it was smoother. And I want to see that other constituency voters would be able to enjoy the electronic voting system as well in due course and befitting of a metropolis such as Hong Kong. As we make improvements in this regard, I think that we need certain improvements in the electoral system. The functional constituencies and also the election committee or the electoral committee, perhaps there needs to be certain improvements. Now, a few points. Now, first of all, the terms of reference, including the terms of reference of the secretary, it says that the Hong Kong government will have to coordinate with the central government and also the other relevant departments of the government. Now, this is a coordination of efforts, such as in transport, etc. So, what the reason why I'm saying this is because I want the secretary to talk about some of the measures that you are thinking about or will be putting into place in terms of better coordination with mainland officers and those who want to cross the border. And that is a communication between the Hong Kong SAR government with the central government and its various departments and ministries. I'm talking about the platform. I'm talking about systems. How can we communicate better with the central government, various departments and ministries so that they can coordinate with us and assist us where appropriate? And also in terms of promotion of the basic law, I'm sure the secretary and the permanent secretary had done a lot of good work. Now, if we can allow the members, including those from the functional constituencies, the electoral constituencies to help participate in promotion of the basic law, that would be good. Right, there were a few areas mentioned just now. First of all, in terms of improving the voting system for the various constituencies, yes, we will continue to do that, and we'll be listening to the views of electoral members and others to continually improve on that. And secondly, for the mainland government officers of the Hong Kong SAR, actually the CE in the policy address had mentioned this as well. We are exactly looking into this, reviewing the workings of the mainland offices of ours, the 14th five-year plan, the Greater Bay Area development, and also the overall development strategy of the government. Under these themes, we want to look into to conduct a comprehensive review of our offices in the mainland. How do we enhance the functions of these offices so that they are better able to support the Hong Kong people residing in the mainland and working in the mainland? How they can do better work. We will be reviewing this. Now, in terms of communication on combating COVID, how we communicate with the mainland authorities. We are doing that at present at different levels, whether it is the Constitutional Affairs Bureau, the Health Department, and we are talking to the Hong Kong Macau Affairs Office, Guangdong Provincial Government, and the different entities within the central government. There is a lot of communication, then the communication channel is smooth, and we will continue to liaise with them and also communicate with them concerning how we fight COVID, and also in terms of testing facilities and resources, etc. Yes, please be assured that we will continue with this work. And next, Ms. Lee Chen-Kang. Yes, a lot of members have talked about the counting of votes and the and the counting of and the election process. Yes, it is true that it started from 7-something in the morning to about 10-something, and the election or the vote counting had completed, and that was very good. I want to commend the relevant people on that improvement. Now, and another point I would want to talk about is that there is a proposed restructuring, and that is for mainland policies and for pertaining to Hong Kong development. As we know, there is a Greater Bay Development Office, and it is under exactly the Constitutional and Mainland Affairs Bureau. Now, I would like to know, for this electoral panel, do we have the responsibility in terms of reference to discuss Greater Bay Area? Because it is not just about Greater Bay Area commerce and labor, but rather it is also about communication for the development of the Greater Bay Area. So I would like to know the division of labor between this panel and also that of the government departments and the other panels, including the commercial affairs panel. Well, thank you for the question. According to our previous division of labor, the arrangement had been that for industry and commercial affairs panel, the Greater Bay Area was really, the discussion of that was undertaken by that panel. And this panel is more about constitutional affairs. And it is, as Mr. Liu had mentioned, this is about the mandate. As mentioned by Mr. Liu, this is a panel that is responsible for, and I would agree that the Greater Bay Area developments in its various aspects would be interesting to the panel members here, and you would want to know more. And that is exactly the reason why I've asked the Greater Bay Area Development Commissioner, Mr. Tommy Yun, to be here with us today. And I really do not mind, even at this meeting and at this panel, to talk about the development of Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau, Greater Bay Area. And we would want you to know more about our work in this regard, as long as you don't mind us taking a lot of time talking about the Greater Bay Area development and not focusing on constitutional affairs. That's up to you. If you want to raise such questions on the Greater Bay Area, we would want to answer you or provide you with the information. Mr. Lee, do you want to follow up with your question? No, that's fine. All right, before we go to the next member, I would want to announce that we need to extend the meeting by 15 minutes. Yes, Ms. Mack, please. Next. Can you hear me? Yes, we can hear you, Ms. Alice Mack. Now, first of all, I would want to say that in the last term of the electoral, after we have amended the schedule, we see that the Privacy Commissioner had taken up a lot of cases. I would want to know from her, after the amendment of the legislation, did you have sufficient manpower in handling the cases? And also in the privacy ordinance, there are certain areas and items. For instance, are there areas where the ordinance should be amended, such as in the area of the right to be forgotten and others? Now, the Electoral Office, every time, they would prepare for a new round of elections by hiring new hands, etc. My question is, how can there be accumulation of experience for the Electoral Office? Can you think about perhaps certain improvements and changes in terms of the system and the operation of the office.
Secretary, on privacy, I'll let the Privacy Commissioner to talk about it. For the electoral arrangements, well, for the registration and election offices, like other government departments, there will be staff going in and out. Well, if you wonder, there will be affect the retention of knowledge, and therefore compromise the execution of elections. That's something we have considered. Well, since the REOs are also staffed by the civil servants, and therefore a regular rotation is just part of the civil service policy. We hope that in each public election we can able to have a fair, open, and honest. We'll hope to be more humanized and more efficient, so that the voters and the candidates will have an easier time. As for how to achieve this, we could improve our electoral system and the arrangements. It's something we would look into. After completing these 3 elections, we'll sum up and allow us to come up with recommendations, and if necessary, I will seek the legislative views. And Privacy Commissioner, please be quick. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Mack's question. After the amendment was passed, we have been working immediately to conduct criminal investigation and prosecute. And we are seeing quick results. And on 13th of December last year, we have conducted the first arrest. And this case is currently waiting for the DOJ's advice. If we have sufficient evidence, we will consider laying charges. And for other criminal investigations, currently the PTPO are handling 40 of such cases. Our colleagues are still investigating. And under the amended ordinance, we're also empowered to issue cessation notices, asking the certain platforms to remove the doxing content and messages. For the past 4 months, we've issued over 350 cessation notices to 12 social platforms, demanding them to remove over 1,700 doxing content. For the complaints, for the past few months, we've been stepping up promotion and education. And the number of doxing cases we received has risen. For January, we received 70 complaints. For the past 3 months, we received a total of 500 cases. In terms of the number of complaints received, it's been growing to again doubled, a 7 times increase. When we received complaints, we shall process these complaints under the newly conferred powers. As for the further amendments to the privacy ordinance, will it consider the right to be forgotten or the latest development in other jurisdictions? The answer is yes. We will consider a basket of factors and the Hong Kong actual situation and propose a practical, concrete proposal to the CMAB. Next, Dr. Junius Ho. Dr. Ho. So, may I ask the Privacy Commissioner, for paragraph 5 on the remarks, that you want to promote equal opportunities of those with different orientation and help to achieve mutual respect and promote a culture of non-discrimination. However, when the Secretary would hope to eliminate discrimination on sexual orientation. Under the Korean Measure Ordinance, it's defined marriage between a man and a woman. Well, we are okay with sexual minorities and sexual orientation. We have to prevent about the legalization of same-sex marriages. This line cannot be crossed. And our Constitution, we ought to have the national security law. We're asking to prevent infiltration of bad cultures. Well, for those promoting same-sex marriages, would undermine our traditional values and infringe on the interests of the nation. That constitute a breach of the national security law. So about the maintaining the marriage constitution between a man and a woman. Thank you, Chairman and Dr. Ho. I talked about this earlier in Electoral. On one hand, we have to promote inclusiveness and eliminate discrimination. Well, that's our policy objective. Also, rather complicated and controversial on issues in when our society yet to reach a consensus. For example, same-sex marriages. We need to handle it carefully and should not casually decide whether we should work on this. And Dr. Ho, please be assured. Well, so far we still need to consult the community before coming up with a detailed study. We'll write you a letter to expound my views. Well, the national security law and Section 23. I still got 1 minute. Well, for Mrs. Yip's question, well, we should target the foreign politicians attacking Hong Kong, the national security law, and our improved electoral system, accusing us of human rights and democracy being undermined. Such narrative is commonplace. However, we don't really manage to respond effectively. Can we make use of our foreign ETOs? Even though these are ETO office, however, on such an important matter, we should respond promptly, if possible. Can you provide some line to ticks so that they can respond easily? So to refute international smearing. Secretary? Yes. Well, we'll provide some info kit and the line to ticks to the other ETOs. And the ETOs, if they notice any unfavorable coverage, and they will clarify. Thank you. Next, Dr. Priscilla Leung. Chairman. First, I'd like to thank the secretaries for the work last year. And finally, Hong Kong entered a new era for our constitutional affairs and democracy. We need to be confident of our political system. On the international UN, and confident on political rights, on public health and national security, the personal rights and liberties can be restricted reasonably. That's quite clear on common law and international law. Therefore, we have to be confident of ourselves. In the UN, we had made it clear. During the pandemic, we all cared about the personal freedom and privacy. Well, maybe the whole government and the secretaries should exercise their rights under Cap 599 to conduct universal compulsory testing, we're able to support you on this in public. In terms of GBA, besides economic benefits, well, besides the senior civil servants, the entry-level civil servants, including the fresh newly appointed AOs, the Civil Service College, from what we know, only organizes seminars. Our civil servants, especially the new generation, must learn like them from the mainland that you should be dispatched to poor villages instead of talking about the economic integration with GBA. We need to help with poverty alleviation and also to fight the epidemic on all fronts. The training should not be limited to Tsinghua University. We should get them to go to different parts of China. The whole civil service, that in times of trouble, that we should attend to different parts. We should allow the civil servants for secondments. Well, some of the civil servants can actually conduct secondments at the UN. We can also go to remote parts of the China for secondments. And for the civil service establishment, we need to extend it to the statutory organizations, for example, the UGC, who can disperse funding of 100 billion. Well, the person in charge must take the oath. Besides economic integration and mindset integration, the heart is important. Therefore, I hope that the secretary can explain about discrimination of people arriving from the mainland. We should join our hearts together to fight the epidemic. Hong Kong should not be alone in this. This is not just our own affairs. It's a matter of national importance. And it's about the livelihood of 1.4 billion people. This has far-reaching consequences. And for the amendment of the regional flag and regional emblem organization ordinance, we mistaken that we could not put on the national flag and national emblem. Well, at the end that we need to follow the basic law to maintain our national dignity, especially the SAR Let's Go. Hope that the secretary can respond briefly. Before you start, secretary, by 12:30, I ask if you won't object, I can extend the meeting for a bit to deal with Ms. Maggie Chen and Mr. Deng Fei's question. If you do not object, then I will let the two speak as we have drawn the line much earlier. Secretary, you're going to have to be very succinct as Dr. Leung already used up her time. Thank you, Professor Leung. Mrs. Leung, Professor Leung offered a lot of suggestions. I see them as quite reasonable and constructive. Therefore, we will study her proposal and we'll report if necessary. Next, Ms. Maggie Chen. And thank you, Chairman. So my question is about the Basic Laws Steering Committee. Will the Secretary consider elevating the status of the Promotion Steering Committee, rename it, and turning into the Constitution and Basic Law Promotion Steering Committee, while upholding the dignity of the Constitution is something that we must implement. Second, would the Secretary consider creating the post of the Commissioner of this Promotion of Basic Law and Constitution to step up the promotion and of the two? And would you consider appointing Director of Broadcasting in this proposed steering committee as an ex officio member? RTHK must be used wisely. And for the Basic Law Promotion Steering Committee or the proposed expanded steering committee, this future steering committee can compile an annual report for the National People's Congress Standing Committee. Well, on page 25 of the paper, mentioned that we forge closer links with the mainland authorities, and it was creating more opportunities for Hong Kong people in the GBA. I received some complaints that the SMEs could not break into the market. With all this rosy approach, however, you can't really get into the market. They really hope that they can be offered a good entry point. And some of the mainland NGOs are willing to help the Hong Kong companies in the GBA, while the mainland government are willing to work and provide resources. However, the Hong Kong government side seems to be quite indifferent to the mainland NGOs, and I want to know the Secretary's views on this. Secretary, so on the promotion of the Constitution and the Basic Law. Thank you, Ms. Maggie Chian's comments. For the first part, the question is about the BLPSC and how to enhance it and for rename it. Well, the chairman of the steering committee is the chief secretary of the administration. Therefore, I can't really speak for him. So maybe I can relay your proposal to the chief secretary or to the BLPSC to look into this proposal. I found them very constructive. As for the mainland and ETOs and offices, well, even though these are the NGOs, however, they have been very effective. For the election committee, we have a special category of Hong Kong people living in the mainland, with 27 seats allocated in the election committee. The CA expressed great importance. Therefore, we have told the central authorities to create this new category in the election committee. Well, we attach great importance to collaboration with the Hong Kong People's Organization in the mainland. And last month, I have met some of the representatives of these organizations. And coming up, we will step with a collaboration and we will support them if necessary.
好，最後一位係鄧。
Next, Mr. Deng Fei. I have two questions. First, on the future of the district council. Well, as we all know, the HAB should be responsible on reforming the district councils. According to the restructuring proposal as floated by the CE,
it is likely that in the future it will become a youth and culture kind of work entity. So will it still be responsible for district administration? I do not know. So this is an unknown. So as we improve on the district council system, will it be who will be responsible for that? Which entity will be responsible for that? I think the Hong Kong SAR government should specify and clarify that as soon as possible. So really, it's about district administration and also the lowest rung, the most foundational rung of consultation for the people of Hong Kong that should be clarified. Now, during this COVID period, it is true that a lot of everyday livelihood issues are not able to be discussed and given consultation at the district council level, and that's no good. And also, there are certain entities, for example, commercial entities, associations which are not registered in Hong Kong. If they want to organize certain activities for promoting communication with the mainland, and they would want to have certain sessions that would promote the communication between the mainland and Hong Kong in the commercial area, what do they do? Do they apply for funding and subsidies, let's say, to the ETOs or to the Hong Kong government? Or would they be able to benefit from funding and sponsorship as with other NGOs in Hong Kong? If you can clarify on that as well. Well, this is really about Hong Kong people in the mainland affairs. Can Mr. Zhang please answer the questions? Yes. First of all, on the district councils and the future development, whatever the government structure would be, of course, there is a proposal from the government, and later on we will be looking at the discussions from the Electoral and hearing your views concerning whether you want to adopt the government's proposal. But whatever the restructuring, district work is very important. And this is something that we have to seriously review and also to improve and correct on. And Mr. Deng Fei, please be assured that it is not about putting it under whichever department or bureau that this direction and purpose will be changed, but rather because there are priority work now, COVID fighting and all that. So within this term of the government, perhaps it is not, there will not be sufficient room for the completion of the improvement of this work. But it is not true that it is just because it's coming under whatever bureau that it is it has fallen by the wayside, this kind of work. Not true. Now, we are actually reviewing, as we speak, how we can improve on the structure and also on and also in terms of the work going forward. Now, you mentioned mainland entities and bodies. We have received information from them, and we will be looking into the funding for the activities. The ETOs are processing those, and the funding and sponsorship had not been significant, whether we can step up with that work, or on the other hand, whether they can partner up with Hong Kong entities and bodies to apply for sponsorships. That can be looked at. The ETOs are also processing and looking into this. Well, we have completed all the questions and answers. We thank the Secretary, Mr. Zhang, for coming to the session and also bringing his team, including the Commissioner for the Development of the Greater Bay Area. We know that through the questions of the members, we know that we want to see more coordination with the mainland, and in particular on Greater Bay Area. And I know that the Secretary will try his very best to go through the Commissioner for the Greater Bay Area to step up with the work in this regard. I would want to thank everyone for coming to the meeting. Under AOB, there are no items, so I would declare this meeting closed. Thank you very much for attending the meeting. Thank you.